All right, Daniel. So we're here for our second miniature podcast or attempt to talk about training and theories and the misery of owning businesses and
Yeah.
doing way too much work that never comes back. But I wanted to just spit all over my screen. I wanted to go into. I had this discussion earlier this week with a previous client of ours who's still a client but also works for me. And he brought up the thought process that, or he brought up the fact that you and I spent like 2 months of our career just throwing around the term high threshold motor units. And
Yeah.
so he said
Daily.
to me, he's like, dude, do you realize, like, I know you write blogs about this and you actually talk about, like, high threshold motor units and they're important for every single sport that you can, actually use them and recruit them. But he was like, I only know about them because you and Dan, in every aspect of coaching, kept saying that you were doing these things to recruit high threshold motor units. And so I thought it would be fitting if we actually talked about that today, and maybe I could go into a little bit of what they are, but if we could expound on how we actually do it with our upper body training, with our lower body training, how Olympic weightlifters, how athletes in all sports performance can benefit from high threshold motor units.
That I guess that sounds fitting and only fair that 7 or 8 years ago we started with this shit, and we've yet to have a discussion fully about it. So yeah, we can do that.
And we're even having this discussion while sober, which makes it even better.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, I guess physiologically, if we can think about, I think it's motor neurons and muscle fibers, and the way the nervous system will sort of gauge the tension of a muscle grouping. So if my pec is being lengthened here, the neurons will fire to muscle fibers, and in turn, as the intensity of that stretch increases or as the load increases, the neurons will in turn signal to the muscle fibers, and over time it will recruit more muscle fibers from the high threshold motor units will recruit more muscle fibers based upon the lengthening or the tension created by the load. So that's sort of my rudimentary understanding from a physiological perspective.
Yes, I think I think for me, when I think high threshold motor units or the recruitment of them, it's any high tension exercise, and we're trying to elicit a response through the nervous system versus other mechanisms of hypertrophy or anything else.
Yeah. That's the other thing too. Is that over time, is that you can imprint these high threshold motor units if we're doing like sets of 10 or 12 or 15 or whatever, and you're actually failing through that mechanical load over that period, and the HTMUs would be recruited on that 13th, 14th, 15th rep potentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my first, I guess some of my earliest experiments, and I don't even know if we ever played around with them with you, but when we would use eccentric hooks, I used eccentric hooks for like back squats and front squats and benches, and I know that like the load, so like the eccentric portion of a bench or of a front squat, let's say a bench, like if we're bringing that down really, really slow, we can lift 120% more when we're doing eccentric movement, and that would signal to recruit a whole bunch of high threshold motor units, and then as the hooks would drop off, the load becomes easier from a concentric perspective, and you can theoretically imprint those high threshold motor units that were recruited during the eccentric portion. I think my first remembrance of, or even working with the hooks that I bought from Fat Grips, was that I never really liked it, and I never really felt comfortable, and I never really saw a huge transfer because of how much they would wobble, the instability.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, one side is a little lopsided just because anatomically that's how we're built, and one side might touch before the other, and the timing could always be off. So I know it, like, from a theoretical perspective, it works, but I never saw a ton of benefit from working with the hooks in that regard to improve the high threshold motor unit recruitment.
Yeah, I think as time went on, I started to find that it was some athletes, like, they freaking love them. Yeah. They feel so stimulated. They feel so much faster when they're using them. Within 2 or 3 weeks, it's this huge response on them. And then the best part is, for other people, don't fucking work at all.
Right.
It's the craziest. It's like it's all or nothing with the method. It's really strange. It's almost like your more explosive athletes can go with them no problem.
Yeah.
But I think if you're a slower type athlete and you start playing with those slow eccentrics, it's almost the opposite of what you're looking for. Like, instead of stimulating high threshold, we're actually just stimulating more of that athlete's weakness.
Yeah.
Like, if someone's a dump truck, you're making them more of a dump truck.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They just can't get out of that first gear.
Right. Yeah, that's actually, they can't get out of that first gear. So I guess, when I think about it, I think about a couple ways that we do it now, where, we've had our throws group has just put up fat numbers on bench over the last, 2 weeks, where we've had 6 guys double 205 or higher, and then we had 2 guys hit 500 pounds on the bench, no gear, anything. Nice. And I think where I've seen a lot of the improvement towards this recruitment is that I'm potentiating, which could be a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
I'm potentiating the bench pretty well with, like a behind the neck jerk or a behind the neck power jerk, so that the nervous system wakes up, so that they're doing 6 doubles or 6 singles at 70 to 75% on the jerk, and they're waking up the nervous system, and they're waking up the shoulder girdle as well. And then when we go over to the bench, so we did this actually. Sam benched 505 after he had jerked 215. And
wow. Okay.
So he gets on the bench, and as he's warming up, he hits 405 for double, and he's like, I feel pretty good. He hits 450 for a double, then he hit 480 for a double, and he's like, come on, Dane, can I try 505 to beat Alex? And I think that if you can look at high threshold motor unit recruitment from the realm of, you can potentiate and you can use compensatory accelerated training like chains or whatever, but you can also benefit from using hooks, and you can also benefit from drop sets. You can also benefit from using a pad bench or any type. What I remember back with you was when your bench had blown up, it was all right, let's do 6 heavy doubles, then drop off, and we'll do 3 sets of 5 at 300 pounds to try and really imprint those high threshold motor units that we woke up from those real heavy sets. And I think that's where it's interesting now, at working with really elite athletes all the way down to high school. What experience do you have where you're sitting there hey, my high school athletes, to wake up those high threshold motor units, we only need to back squat. And we don't need to do anything crazy. We just need to do triples or doubles. But when we're working with somebody who's a world-class athlete, it's got to get a little bit more creative.
Yeah, I think it's the dose response, right? So, obviously with a high school kid, first time they back squat properly to depth, to, full depth. Or the first time they ever single leg squat and they've never used more than just their quads before.
Yeah, they're like, what the fuck?
Right then and there, you're done.
Yeah.
All the stimulation that's necessary.
Their hamstrings start shaking.
Yeah, and just there's such a scale on it, right? So for like at the very bottom, stimulating these high threshold units is simply introducing like a unilateral exercise instead of a bilateral because they're not used to it, or something like hamstring pulls because they don't know what that muscle feels like. So right then and there, it's an easy stimulation. But yeah, once you start getting stronger, you're gonna start playing with some things. I remember one stimulation we used when you were trying to bench 500. We would go from bench press. We would go bounce bench. And then we would go straight into decline because we knew we could train heavier on the decline. So it was almost like the heavy competitive exercise was allowing us to overshoot on the next exercise. Because I remember that one time, like when my bench started to creep up, 365, 385, we went right over to the decline, and all of a sudden I was hitting 315 for like 10, and it was just like, how, right? Because we were just so up from the first couple exercises that the whole session is even better.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and I think that's the big key with coaching, with strength coaching, sports performance in general, is figuring out like, okay, how can we wake it up? And then when it's woken, like, how can we get it to hold? And dude, that's the biggest thing that I think a lot of mistakes that people make is that if you think about it, dude, some guys will sit there and be like, I'll just hit like 4 sets of 5 or something. Like, I look at these college programs, I'm like, dude, you're doing like 4 sets of 4 cleans? Like, you think that's enough? Get the fuck out of here, dude. We're doing sets at, like, last night I had one of my stud football guys in here, and we were doing like 10, 11 sets of clean. It's like, I remember, you know, even still to this day, where it's like, all right, what if we work up to, you know, heavy double, heavy triple, and then we do 7 doubles or triples at 85% or higher, and then we drop down, we do 2 sets of 5 at like 65% as fast as we can, and then we think about the technique involved, So then we're going, okay, the load is going to stimulate, then on top of that, the movement's going to stimulate the high threshold motor units, and then on top of that, when we're doing fast reps, the coupling time or that transition, the turnover time, is going to create a whole bunch of recruitment, and then moving it as fast as you can is also, on the concentric, is also going to lead to more motor unit recruitment. It's like, for these college guys, dude, I think about college kids, and I know you think this way too, where it's like, it's so easy to get college kids strong, and they're not getting stronger because they're doing 3 sets of 5 or something, and then they're on to the next exercise, and it looks like a monkey made their program. They've got 10 exercises in their program. And it's like, dude, you're never recruiting shit because you're never potentiating, you're never waking anything up, you're never getting enough of a load over. They might have one set where they're like on the verge of recruiting the big motor units, and then it just disappears, where it's like, dude, you're doing 6, 7, 8 sets. That's when they get imprinted, and that's when it carries over to the sport.
Dude, absolutely. Like, we took when we started really getting into weightlifting. I think that's when we wanted to bring those methods to regular training. I think that was a very big turning point when we were onto something, because it was like, well, you know, how can all these weightlifters do, you know, how can they snatch 150 reps throughout the week? Not even throughout the week, but the first couple days of the week. Maybe you're already in that 100 rep range, split evenly. But when you look at traditional programs, like you're saying, like, you know, 3 sets of 6 to 8, and that's all they're doing on that exercise, and then they're off to their next shit. And what do they actually even get out of that session, right? So like you start waving and using all these rep ranges, and you go heavy to go light. Like, dude, there's times where when I was still weightlifting, I couldn't feel shit unless I went heavy to go back down to actually work on like imprinting anything I was trying to do.
I was just going to bring that up, is that even the waves is like, you know, actually Anna has this issue where, dude, she's strong enough to snatch, this one girl is in high school, she's strong enough to snatch 95, she's hit 93, but like, she will snatch to 78 or 80. In 81 lift will look automatic. Next lift, she's all over the place. And it's like, I had her do 3 waves. 3-2-1, 3-2-1, 2-1-1-1-1. Okay? And she was like, wait. She like couldn't grasp what was going on. And by the 2-1-1-1, she's hitting 90, 93, 93. And I was like, Anna, what ends up happening is that as we go up and come back down and go back up and come back down, when you go like a triple at 75 and then a double at 80 and then a single at 85, then you go back to 80. 80's technique is better because you're more aware. You're recruiting more motor units. Your nervous system is prepped. It believes that it's about to do something crazy, so you're heightened, and then you go do it, and it feels really good and crisp, and then you do it again, and that's what happens. And it's like that's a method of potentiation and a method of recruitment for high threshold motor units, and even just using those waves is a very simple way to get somebody who's 17 to recognize that. And then you're not even talking about other drop sets or little tricks that we like with the pad bench or the bounce bench that we would use. I think that's dude, I think the bounce bench is one of those things that we've played around with quite a bit with the board and even with a pad. Mm-hmm. And I look at what Mark Bell's doing and the kind of money he's making. I'm like, that motherfucker, dude, if we would come up with some idea like that. that little board. Remember that little wooden board we used to use?
Dude, it wasn't even a 2x4.
Yeah,
it was just
like
a
surface.
Yeah. Dude, it was just something to brace slamming the bar off of us as hard as possible. And remember we would watch videos of other throwers doing like 200 kilos. They'd have like padding and all this other
like
stuff.
This.
And like the bar just completely wraps around their body. And you and me are with the fat bar just slamming the shit as hard as we can into ourselves. But as much as I hated the exercise initially, it ended up proving like that's one of those like don't judge it just quite yet, even by appearance. Because when you look at it, you're like, this is a pretty crude looking exercise.
Yeah.
But then you get under the bar and you start using it, you're like, God damn, like there is such a disruption happening at the bottom that like my nervous system needs to like game up or I'm gonna die down there.
Yeah.
Like
because you gotta keep in the groove too.
Yeah. Like that kind of groove and that kind of speed, like eccentrically, like you gotta be it's game up every time you use that exercise.
Dude, and I think I'm thinking back like I just posted a video actually on my Instagram. So I've been reading a little bit more, just like going back to all this shit, like everything, right? Like revisiting. And I did like a real slow eccentric on my, not really slow, but slower eccentric on my first one. And then at the bottom quarter, I was like, boom. And then I did it fast. And I think that's stuff that like people don't pay attention to is changing the way the rep is executed, changing the speed at different points, because that's where you start to find like different areas and you start to drive a little bit quicker. But dude, just doing bounce bench, like you come off the bench and you're like, you feel it. You're immediately like, oh, you know, like when we bounce bench here, it's like everybody gets off the bench like, oh. Yeah, what? And it's like, it's just, and it applies to so many different sports because you will be in this position in throwing or in wrestling or in football or dude in hockey even when you're swinging here like lat and pec strength, and it's like, I don't know why this shit's so difficult, but it's not, you know, it's not easy, or it's not hard to play around with movements like this and then play around with it in your program.
No, it's not, and it even makes like a non-transferable exercise like the bench press. Like obviously, it's got a huge transfer to throwing,
right? And
we could argue whether like a traditional bench press will jive with like football alignment or not. But as soon as you bring the bounce bench into sports like football, it's automatically a better exercise because no one's ever going to press that slow.
Yeah.
Things are never going to come at you that slow. So, like, it's like that fast eccentric is almost, it's necessary.
Yeah.
It needs to be there.
Yeah.
You know? Just like how your hamstring is never going to really take a slow eccentric on the field. It's always going to be like the fastest your body can actually handle it.
Yeah.
And something like a hamstring pull is the same thing. It's the fastest your body can handle it.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, I guess that was where I wanted to. My next question then was just like getting off the upper body is like, okay, let's think about squats, like back squat.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm right now. I made a bet with Jordan and Jake.
Yeah, I saw.
My goal, dude, I just want to back squat 250 ass to grass. That's really all I want to do. And I think I'm getting close. I paused squatted 217 and I hit 220 for a triple, so I think I'm getting close to 250. But I was even thinking like, okay, so how can we potentiate an ass to grass high bar back squat? You know, let's just start there. You've got a high bar back squat. What do you do, Dan, with somebody who wants to, like, they've got a 240 back squat? We gotta get them to 260. What are you gonna do?
Oh, easy, dude. We're gonna put in 6 seconds on the eccentric.
Always do that shit.
But here's the important part.
Motherfucker.
6 seconds has to happen before you drop for that stretch reflex to make a transfer.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to. A stretch reflex is a very hard thing to kill, but when you start to intentionally fight against it, that I don't think that's a very good thing. So, dude, we would go 6 seconds to maybe about 3 inches above the hole. So right when you feel like you're ready to drop and hit that bounce, like it's there because you learn to function in the bounce is easy. You know, as long as you have the legs for it, you'll come out of it. But as long as you can get your coordination down, abdominal-wise and everything else, bracing pattern-wise, I think that's where the eccentric's the most important thing. Now, we're potentiating the quads. Our high threshold is getting stimulated, and by the time we hit that stretch reflex, it's ready to explode out of there.
Yeah.
So right now, we have people that are squatting at minimum 4 seconds on the way down, and they're hitting PRs over their original back squats. And we haven't gone back to like using like regular parameters for squat.
So
it's crazy. It's so much practice too, you know.
Yeah, I gotta share this. Is that like I've gone to the last 3 weeks because I've been squatting pretty regularly now.
Yeah.
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
So the first week it was like pause, double bounce, normal.
Yeah.
Then the next week I did double bounce, normal. Okay. And every single day I was just building to like 210, 215 kilos. 205 to 215, somewhere in there. Now this week I've been going pause, 1, 2, up, normal. Okay, so double bounce was in the first 2 weeks. So now this week, what I did was Sunday I went up to a pause at 217, and now the goal is that every single day this week I just do a pause single at 210 or higher. So what I'm thinking for myself is like, okay, if I'm fully stretched in that bottom position, I'm recruiting a shit ton of high threshold units. I'm holding good posture in the pause. I've got to stay upright when I get out of the pause. So I'm holding pretty good technique. Now what I'm starting to think is, okay, after this, so I have like basically a 3-week block of like crazy variations that are helping me.
Yeah.
Why not spend 1 day a week where I work on like double bounce or pauses, then 1 day a week where I'm doing like traditional movement, and then 1 day a week where I'm doing those slow eccentrics, and basically find out which day of the week am I going to be amped as fuck to try and hit a big number. You know, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, dude. I mean, you could even start mixing on the same days, right? So you could wake it up by maybe going like slow eccentrics to work up to like, you know, a heavy triple or whatever, or heavy double, and then you could drop down after, and you could do something like on the minute double bounces.
Yeah.
For doubles, and just keep grooving all that pattern again to, like I said, you potentiate it with that heavy 3, the eccentrics in there, so you're up even more.
Yeah.
And then you go on the minute and keep grooving that bounce, the double bounce. By the end of 10 minutes, I bet you would be ready to ramp back up again.
Do you think at
on
the end?
double bounce.
No, would you say at the end of that 10 minutes it would be ramp back up with singles or more doubles or triples?
I would say probably doubles still. Yeah, I would say doubles.
I think where I'm concerned for myself is like, I mean, one, I don't have a ton of squat volume, but I think I'll be okay. I think, so like today what I ended up doing was I did like 8 sets with the pauses, and I basically went like 160, 200, 210, 210, 210, 210, and then I went down to 150, and I did 3 sets of 5 unbroken. And I think, something simple like that is helping just to get that volume up without banging me up. But I'm also sitting there going, okay, what are the consistent injuries that you're going to get from squatting? I might get tight quads. I might get my knee pain might be below or above my knee. My lower back might get beat up. My hips might hurt a little bit. So I'm trying to also factor that in because I am 35. So it's like,
yeah.
As I build towards this goal, I don't know. Like, it's just crazy though, because even I wanted to share this. I know I'm fucking ranting all over the place, but even yesterday, I did that pause. I did a pause at 212 with no gear. Dude, I went in, and right after that, that's when I did 405 for 7 on the fat bar, and I did 405 with the pad right after that. And I was like, dude, that's what potentiation does, and that's what high threshold motor unit recruitment does. Is that it takes it, and now you go to another exercise, and you're just hammering everything because of what you've done, prior to that. And that's where I see the transfer so much to all these other sports. Is it's like, dude, now if you can imprint those motor units consistently, and then you get a really good warm-up before a competition, before a training session, you have no idea what you're going to be able to recruit while you're competing.
Dude, absolutely. Like that, yeah. So like, and that's the thing, right? Like, training session, you're not just training your ability to recruit all these fibers, but it's not in a competition setting, right? So like you're also training like the excitability of your body.
Yeah.
Right? So when it actually comes to that point where like I know a lot of your lifters mine are as well. Sometimes in the gym they can't do shit. And then all of a sudden you get them out on the platform, and it's like, where did that come from? How did you even like make that lift? That was such a long shot for a medal or any type of situation, but it happened. But the shit's done in the training because every session we're just bringing that nervous system to a higher functioning level throughout the weeks and months. It's cool because I think a lot of people still think that training responses are still week to week and month to month. But when you start playing with high threshold motor units, you can make, like you were saying with the waves, huge progress in one session.
Yeah, in literally one session where it's like, there's one day of training, and this day of training is going to get you a PR either 20 minutes from now in another lift or tomorrow in the next lift just by what we're doing today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess... I think one of the few areas that I have struggled with this topic specifically is related to pulls. And like, dude, I'm going to be honest. Like, when I would try and potentiate my deadlift, the only lift that would actually get me fucking amped up and actually get me awake for my deadlift was pause back squats or double bounce back squats or unbroken back squats. That was like the only exercise that I could use that would actually get me to feel stronger and more explosive off the floor with a pull. And I don't know if it's just because it's the deadlift and I wasn't doing clean pulls or what. I don't know.
Dude, that one, you're long-legged as fuck. Like, you've got super long legs, right? Yeah. So, like, you can see it in your back squat. Like, as long as your leg gets stronger, it will go up no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, there's no huge secret. It's just whatever the longest part of your body is, you train it, it'll get better, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you squatting is waking up your fucking lazy legs, and all of a sudden you can pull finally because you're not just ripping your back off the floor.
Like this. This is my deadlift right here.
Yeah, it's like a
my
crane,
legs
dude.
aren't doing anything. Dude, it's crazy. That's just like how I feel comfortable pulling. People say that shit to me. I'm like, dude, I don't even think about like my back's just strong.
Dude, it's great. We have a kid that pulls the same way in here. He has to squat something, or he won't deadlift shit that day. Like there was one day, God, I think I want to say it was the same day. He pause squatted like 200 kilos or something like that, and then within like 4 sets, worked up to 250 on the deadlift, and it was like, what the 255? Yeah. I was like, what the hell is that, man? Like, just some people are just built to rip shit off the floor. So then you got a little bit of leg into it, and it's like it's nothing, you know.
Dude, I wanted to share this because this is where you'll tell me I'm an idiot. Last week I did the pause double bounce one single, like pause double bounce unbroken right away. And Haley's got this in her program right now, which this complex of squats I think is phenomenal. But I literally squatted, and then I went over and I was like, it's a Friday, I'm doing bis and tris after I squatted. I swear to God, I could hammer curl 100-pound dumbbells, and it was like, dude, what the hell is going on? Like 100-pound dumbbell hammer curls for like sets of 10, and it was easy. It's like just from that, and now I just keep thinking with all my throwers. I mean, my throwers do an Olympic lift basically like 5 days a week. And even before we do like our athlete day, they're going to do a jerk or they're going to do a power snatch or something. And I think that manipulation of the nervous system is what pays off long term. I think it's what gets people to buy into technique more because they're always a little bit more aware. Their brain, it's almost like they have a shot of coffee, while they're going to train. And I think that's what it is. It's like, if you can potentiate your nervous system in training, you literally are adding. It's like you're having 200 milligrams of freaking caffeine.
Yeah, absolutely. And dude, like, I think personally, like, it's not just the stimulation of your nervous system, but your nervous system also in stimulating your hormones as well.
Yeah.
During the session, so you're basically just telling your body across the board, like, wake up, it's go time, it's time to train, like, let's add shit to the bar.
Yeah.
So any of those movements, and I've noticed, I don't know if you noticed this too, but like, it has to be some type of Olympic lift. Mm-hmm. It can't be jumps. It's
almost too low.
The response it's just not there.
Yeah.
Like you can jump all day after you clean or snatch or squat,
yeah.
But if you start the session off like that, it just doesn't do it.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that with myself. If I like squat and I feel fatigued, I'll hit a baseline number and then I go do my jumps. Then I feel really good doing the jumps. Whereas if I did the jumps and then squatted, I'd feel like trash the whole session.
Yeah,
because you're not ready. You're not awake or anything.
Yeah. So, what do you think about this one? I know a lot of people attempt this, but I think it's very hit or miss. Like a lot of lifters will try to do their squats before their Olympic lifts.
Yeah.
And I noticed I think it takes a certain type of athlete to reap any benefits of that.
They're training once a day?
Yeah.
Yeah, one session a day. Okay, so right now, I think that depends on the lifter. I think it depends. Somebody like Haley, I do not think that would be beneficial because she does get fatigued from that. I think there's a point when I will have her do that. Jake would get destroyed. Kate, dude, I swear that. So yesterday, actually, Kate worked up to a 115 triple, and she's a 59, so she did 115 for triple. Then she did 110 for 5. Then she did 105 for 7. And then she did 7 doubles, a clean and jerk, and she worked up to 91 in her double clean and jerk. And I know the 91's not huge, but it's like what, 9? It's like 88, 89% of her best. And I'm sitting there like, if she's doing this now and her squat is increasing, and I've always seen when her squat goes up, her cleans go up. So the next program then will pull the squats back to after the clean and jerks, and her squats might just maintain, but her clean and jerk's going to go up because her squat increased from the previous program, and she's doing it on fresh legs. So I think you've got to look at it in that regard that she's learning that potentiation is helping her improve her technique in the clean and jerk because now she's holding better posture. She's a little bit more awake. The set of 7 might have been a little too much metabolic work for her going into that clean and jerk.
Sure.
But the 3 and the 5 for a female, I believe, are like a 2 to 4 for males. And I think in turn that will carry over well because of going back to that, the high threshold motor units and imprinting that technical movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the situation, if it's a male, I think if you're trying to wake that person up and stimulate the session, maybe you squat up to something you can clean and jerk.
Yeah.
And then when you start back over, you start clean and jerking up to whatever that number is for the volume. I think that's probably better, but I see people kill themselves on squats.
And then go do it.
At the beginning of the session, and then it's all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm going to go snatch and clean and jerk, and then I'm going to bitch about my snatch and clean and jerk isn't doing anything because I'm using like the most general exercise to ruin the day.
Dude, you know what I did want to tell you too? So Kate came in this morning, so she trained last night, and then she has to train in the mornings on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Dude, she told me, I said, so are you sore? And she said, yeah, my legs are sore, but my back's sore, but it doesn't hurt like it usually does. I actually feel pretty good. And she had low hang snatch, okay? So she's doing low hang snatches. Dude, she fucking smashed 76. And it was like, then I start thinking, did that squat work from last night actually help her low hang snatch? Because she's just a little more aware of what her back's doing now. It's like she's always a little wonky with her lower back. And then when she's doing this 76, I'm like, dude, she just low hang snatch 76. She might be able to snatch 85 right now, like holding good positions off the floor. That was only 16 hours ago that she did that workout. Like,
well, dude, that's the nice thing too is like once we stimulate any high threshold motor unit, there is a possibility, anecdotally, but I feel like that shit could last up to 48 hours.
Dude, I agree with you. It's not going to be as heightened as it is like within that first hour.
Yeah, it cools off, but it's still there.
It's still higher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I remember. I mean, this goes more with hormones, but I mean they play off of each other. Like the traditional way that a weightlifter's like training is like structured, like 3 days on, 1 day off, 2 days. There was even a compensation curve moving that from like highest volume to almost starting to cool off as people get ready for the big Friday or whatever, to peaking for that big Friday almost every week, hormonally and nervous system wise as well. It's dude, it's good shit. If you're not playing with your nervous system, you're not training right.
Yeah, no, exactly.
You're just not.
All right, I think that's good. I think I'm gonna go stimulate some high threshold motor units. I'm going to use that term for the remainder of today with absolutely everything that I'm doing, and I'm going to tag you on a high threshold motor unit post on Instagram.
I think if we could drop another word of the week before we discuss it, I think the only other word we could use is trophism.
Yeah, we definitely have to. We have to do that.
Dude,
I wanted to bring up, I follow this guy, he's a researcher, and he's like, turns out that full range of motion squats can lead to greater hypertrophy than partial range of motion squats. And I'm like, this guy's a fucking researcher at a university. He gets paid to do this. And he just wrote that as though it was like this groundbreaking information. It's like, who is actually listening to this guy? Like, all he has to do is go to a fucking weightlifting meet, dude. Every person there has quads the size of my head. It's like, you need
research has shown that smoking is bad for you. Like, what? Like,
you couldn't take that financial investment that they paid you to do and like donate it to like cancer research. We had to pay you to do this shit. Holy fuck, dude! That shit drives me nuts. It's like, so we do need to talk about trophism because then we can talk about it from the realm of we're still in this argument. Okay. Let's talk about, you can achieve trophism through mechanical load and not through like hypertrophy based training, and you can also do it through hypertrophy based training, and that's a good discussion. So, fuck.
Absolutely, dude. Trophism. Don't say trophism to Caitlin. I remember that one time Caitlin literally screamed at us in the car.
She's like, you guys are like children.
We wouldn't stop saying trophism. She was ready to flip.
Oh, jeez. All right.
All right, dude.
Till next time, Dan.
All right, dude. See ya.
All right, later.